Good Tuesday to you, everybody in Gov 603. Welcome to week, boom, bam, 14. 14. Can you believe it? You have almost made it to the end of the semester. And at least you've almost made it to the end of weekly work because we do not have any readings for week 16. So this one and next week, and you're done. All right, good job. Hang in there, stay motivated, stay caffeinated. Well, in my case, I think we have herbal tea here. What do we have here? The I'd hike that mug, and indeed I would, and did, and probably will. Thank you to my wife. Blowing tea all over myself. Suddenly I have a drinking problem. Okay, before we get to the questions and answers, your answers from week 13, let's take care of a couple of pieces of business. Just as a friendly reminder, your papers are due on the 21st, so that's 10 days from now. Today's the 11th, right? If you have any issues or concerns, please reach out and contact me. Okay, please don't wait until the last minute. I'm here to help you, but I cannot help you if I don't have time to help you within, and especially in spring semester, because the registrar is very concerned to get final grades in and get everything buttoned up, because there are people who are graduating. All right. Also, as a reminder, your final exam is going to be on the 27th, 28th. If you go to the assignments folder, all right, you will find a review sheet. It's at the top of all the assignments. You just go ahead and download the PDF. This is not an exhaustive list of things you should know, but it gives you, sort of the general gist of the thing. Okay. The way to prepare for the final exam is the same way that you prepared for your midterm exam. Go back and look. Excuse me, I spilled tea on my hand. Go back and look at the discussion boards. All right, weeks 1 through 8, and then 10 through 15. And yes, we will include things from board number 15. And be particularly familiar with terms, concepts, and definitions, because the questions will be true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, short answer. So not, just don't simply be able to give a rote definition, that's a memorized definition. Be able to explain it, all right, because you might see something in a short answer like explain this, all right, and then you're going to be all ready. Okay. If you have any questions about preparation for this, again, I'm here to help, and I want to help you. Okay, let's take a look at the questions and answers from week 13. All right, where we dabble just a little in some elements of qualitative analysis, and then some of the issues that come up with qualitative analysis. So question number 1, explain the following two terms: critical junction analysis and comparative historical analysis. Okay, Andrew, I like what you're doing here. Very good, very thorough answer. Comparative historical analysis, CHA, is a method that is used as a tool by social scientists in examining and explaining historical situations. Define CHA, Ritter, you go back to the author, as I told you to, being characterized by its emphasis on historical contextuality, comparison explicitly aimed at producing causal arguments about a macro-sociological phenomenon. Okay, and that is precisely correct. Now, be able to explain that, all right, if you were asked to in a short answer. And then you say, and this is exactly what we're looking for, Andrew, in simple terms, this method attempts to explain historical events by identifying and directly comparing all possible causal factors, including the players and the circumstances that led some historical outcomes. So in other words, for both of these, okay, critical junction and comparative historical, these are approaches within the qualitative methodology. All right, comparative historical, as the name suggests, looks at the multiplicity of factors that were involved with an event happening the way it did, and then ask the question, well, what if this factor was or wasn't present? Or what if this factor was different how would that have influenced the outcome of the event? All right, next, Andrew. Critical junction analysis is a kind of CHA method. Defined in general terms, critical junction analysis tests the hypothesis that a domestic social factors that correlate within the institutional outcome of interest may be androgynous to political decisions made much earlier in time for reasons unrelated factors. I think there's a word missing there. The critical junction is a notable political social event that occurred at a specific historical point in time, and that's how you remember the two. Okay, so just think of the word critical junction, like right at this point in time, and they're different. They're similar in that they come from the same group, sort of like apples and oranges, but they're different ways of looking at an event. So, for instance, the alleged, and I say that because I don't believe there's been a definitive ruling on it. Okay, I'm not trying to play politics here with what I'm about to say. The alleged insurrection of January 16th. What caused it? Well, if you were to look at it from a comparative historical perspective, you'd say, you had these crowds at the White House, but you've had crowds, at the Capitol. You had crowds there before, so that's not it. You had a hotly contested election. Have you had hotly contested elections in the past? Yes. Have they drawn crowds like this? Well, okay, now there's a unique factor. You had, belief in widespread fraud as part of the contention of the election. You had a mobilized populist movement. So these sorts of comparative, like have you had them before? Yes, no. Have they been combined in this way? Yes, no. Would be used to explain the people entering the Capitol building. If you looked at this through critical junction analysis, you might look at specific events or individuals that you could say, that right there, that's the catalyst for the event. So looking at it this way, you could say, and as the Congress asserted that it was the speech given by President Trump, that was the critical juncture in the people entering the Capitol. Now, just as an aside, and I have not analyzed this event. I have to be honest about that as an historian that I am. But based on the evidence, in case those of you who might be wondering, do I believe that this speech by the president was the critical junction? No, I don't. I think if we're looking at critical junctions, the nature of the security at the Capitol was as much of a critical junction as was any speech. And it's not well known, throughout the country, but the individuals that guard federal property like the Capitol, these are not stormtroopers. These are not elite police units. They're often retired police officers. I'm not taking anything away from who they are or what they do, but they're just not trained to deal with large groups of people. Okay, and that's a good thing because the presumption is that there's a certain amount of restraint amongst the people, that they're not just going to come crashing in the building, and therefore you don't have to have sort of a shock troop to respond to them. Okay, good answer, Andrew. Question number 2, according to Abdallah et al., why is identity important for political science research? Is identity best used as an independent or dependent variable? Explain your answer. And I'll be honest with you here, this was a teeny bit of a trick question. Okay. And you may see it again somewhere. I'm just saying. Wink. Okay. Amani, I like what you do here. Identity is important for political science research, according to Abdallah, because it influences political attitudes, behaviors, and outcomes. Yeah, how people see themselves, both within a group, be that their family, their community, some sort of a larger community. That word still befuddles me, that they see that they belong to. I mean, about 5 years ago, I became gluten intolerant. And I don't know what I've done, or maybe I didn't pay my dues. I made somebody mad. I don't get the announcements from the the gluten-free community. I don't know where they meet. I've never been greeted by anybody of the group. I'm searching. I'm wondering, what is it? How if you're watching this video, gluten-free community, what did I ever do to you? Okay, so we you get the point. But we construct these identities about ourselves, and then they become drivers of our behavior. So you're exactly right. Amani, okay, collectively, identity contributes to the formation of social and political ideologies that exist among various groups of people. Okay, so if you're doing research, how's it best used? Dependent or independent variable? And here's the bit of the trick question, okay? Identity can be used as both an independent and dependent variable. And that's exactly right. Because you can start with and say, independent variable. Someone's political, those people of a political identity, do they tend to vote like this, as opposed to these people of political identity, do they tend to vote like this? Or do policies like this tend to increase or decrease political identities like that? Okay, so it can be used as both. That's a correct answer. All right, good answer, Amani. Question number 3. From the chapter Trade-offs in Measuring Identities, comparisons of 5 approaches, I asked you to pick one of the experimental techniques suggested to measure identity. Briefly summarize the technique. Okay, so there are a lot of you picked all kinds of different ones. There was no right answer to this question except to see that you understood what these are. And again, make sure that you know all 5, regardless of which one you pick, because you might see them again. A wink. Matthew, good job here. I chose open-ended approach, which allows subjects to explain their rationale for choosing certain descriptors for their identity. Now, pay attention that if you're a researcher and you're asking these open-ended questions, okay, your job is not to confirm or push against their identity. Your job is to just and keep your affect, your face, how you operate, is to keep yourself neutral, to let them, the subjects, tell you about the rhymes and reasons for the identity. You're there as a recorder, and it's a job well done if you keep your bias, whether you approve of it or not. And you got to watch your facial expressions when you're doing these interviews, out of the process. The rationale may differ from what the researcher expects. Subjects' contents may vary between persons who identify in the same category. The benefit of this model is comparing insightful answers for the period in question. In politics, a view today may change tomorrow. Alignments together are causal effects leading to perceptions and views. And a snapshot of time may forecast future expectations and similarities. Exactly. Very, very good. Very well said. Very well answered. Okay. Question number 4. Why, according to Pearson, are trends in politics much harder to measure than those in economics? Do you agree? Explain your answer. Now, there were a couple of you who said, I didn't get that from the chapter at all, that they were saying that it was harder. Just saying, there's more measurable certainty. Well, that's what I meant. So for those of you who pointed that out, technically, okay. Maybe I should tweak the question. It's something to be like, there's more difficulty in identifying measurables. All right. Anyway, Mary, Pearson gives a number of common sense reasons why trends in politics are much harder to measure than those in economics. In short, politics are much more able to be manipulated, I think is what you mean. While economics have inexorable forces that are more based on the underlying laws of supply and demand. And this is true. And this is unbeknownst to a lot of people. Many that you meet, even right, studying in your program, maybe sitting next to you, if we actually sat next to each other anymore, they do not understand some of the forces of supply and demand that run, economic forces. Now, when you get down to it, I mean, these forces of supply and demand are in fact outgrowths. They're manifestations of. They're the artifice that is what you see of human behavior, human reaction. The difference between economics and politics is it's a much narrower range in economics. It is people tend to act in a more, not always, but more predictable ways where economy is concerned. Now, the really interesting space, and we'll come back to you here in just a second, Mary. The really interesting space, and even trickier to make an accurate prediction, let alone a measurement, is where those two categories of politics and economy intersect. And I'll point to, for example, this particular place and point in history. Bud Light has decided to rebrand itself by using Dylan Mulvaney, a guy that dresses up like a woman, to rebrand Anheuser-Busch is the parent company, to rebrand this beer. All right. Now, the calculation was that economically, the product was sort of stalled out, that there was no increase in sales, which is the purpose of a company. All right. By way of public relations, the idea was to get a conversation going. Well, that certainly occurred. There certainly is a conversation about this product. What remains to be seen by way of outcome over the full arch of the experiment is if the conversation, heated as it is, will result in greater or lesser sales of the product. So that's the intersection. This is very, that very, very much in using someone like Dylan Mulvaney, they politicized the product. And I don't mean politics as in running for office. I mean, the discourse amongst people, from once the word comes, politics from polis, from the things that go on and how you govern a city, and this sort of exchange. How will that affect the sale of the product? Because that's ultimately the point. All right. Hard to say at this point. Okay. Back to you, Mary. Okay. In short, politics are much more able to be manipulated, while economics have inexorable forces and more based on underlying laws of supply and demand. There are only a few ways that economics truly work. There are many ways for political actors to get political systems to work. He summarizes his main points in this way. The first, consider for four prominent interconnected aspects of politics that makes this realm of social life conducive to increased returns of process. Then we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of these features make increasing returns process prevalent in politics. Second, I explain why. We're still quoting the author here, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave out the quote because we really, I'm assuming everybody read it, but good answer, Mary. Yeah, it's a more complicated system. So it's sort of like the difference between, forecasting the weather over 14 days and a wide region. And this is a very simple analogy, as opposed to sticking your head outside and saying this is what the weather is doing right now. All right. There are a multiplicity of factors, variables, dependent variables, when you move into political systems and the political process, than are at work in economics. And now this is my opinion. I think one of the reasons for that is, while we spend a lot of time, as a society, hashing out politics, voting and policies and how the system should work and who votes and when at what time, and do they vote remotely or they have to show up, and yada. We spend very little time discussing the process of economics, and it's a curious phenomenon between the two. And the question, is raised why. I think, and again, I've not done a lot of research, and there's just some cursory reading. I think one of the reasons for that is that we are either unaware or we do not understand our own behavior when it comes to economic behavior. I'm not saying everybody. I'm looking at the bell curve here. That's my hypothesis. Maybe I should figure out a way to test that. All right. Anyway, good job, good week. So remember, papers coming up, final exams, over into the assignment folder you go. to get instructional sheets for both of them if you have any questions about how to prep for the exam or how to wrap up this paper. And remember, if you make the changes that we focused on in the first bit, and the first bit is part of the second bit, make those changes and then don't repeat those same issues in the fuller paper. If you scored higher in the fuller paper, I raise your grade on the first paper. And you know how I do that? I actually grade it with a split screen. I put your first paper over here, and then I pull up your finished paper, and I'm actually reading across going, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, fix that. Or if I see it's essentially the same, I go, oh, that's the same thing. All right. So if you fix it and you score better on the final version, I change the score. So if you weren't happy with the score on that first version, no worries. You get it this time because writing is a process. All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you so very, very much for all of your hard work and, good and vigorous discussions. All right. If you have any questions, I'm trying, I'm actually asking people to schedule with me during office hours so I can get as many people in as possible. Okay. So if you need to speak with me, shoot me an email and I will get you in there. All right. And remember, thinking about you and praying about you. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you on Blackboard. Bye-bye.